I wake up every morning just crying, thinking this is not going to be what's going to happen every single day.
It's every parent's worst nightmare to discover that their child has harmed another, especially when it isn't in self-defense. Now, imagine the horror of seeing your once innocent child, now an adult, accused of a heinous crime. How should a parent react? Can a parent who has cherished their child since before birth abruptly cease to love and protect them? This was the agonizing reality for Cindy and Ronnie Watts when their son, Chris, was accused of murdering his pregnant wife and 2 daughters in August 2018. In numerous interviews, Cindy's defense of her son stemmed from an unwavering maternal love, making the allegations seem impossible to her, even after his confession. Accepting the reality remained an insurmountable challenge. She raised him as a kind, considerate boy. How could this be possible? Haunted by memories of Chris as a loving child, Cindy struggled with the incongruity between her memories and the accusations. When Chris called, his voice trembling, saying his wife and children were missing, her heart sank. This could not be happening. The confession subsequently given to the police was something that Cindy could not reconcile. The idea that her beautiful baby boy could be the monster who murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters was simply inconceivable. Cindy's enduring love for her son prevented her from fully embracing this grim reality. The Chris she knew, the child she nurtured and loved, could not be the same person accused of such monstrous acts. Her world was irrevocably shattered as she grappled with the incomprehensible truth that her granddaughters were murdered in a horrible fashion and that her beloved son could be involved in such a profound tragedy. Public reaction was swift and harsh. People expected her to disown her son, to shame him as they did. But Cindy's response was more complex. How could a mother turn her back on her child, even in the face of such overwhelming evidence? Her instinct was to protect him, to hold on to the memories of the loving son she raised, despite the monstrous acts he confessed to. Cindy's struggle was not just with the public's judgment, but with her own heart, torn between a mother's unconditional love and the horrific reality of her son's actions. Welcome to Timeless Mysteries, where we discuss the impossible. Please like and subscribe to my channel and join my community. Take a moment and put yourself in the shoes of the mother of convicted murderer Chris Watts. She loves her child and her granddaughters deeply, but the horror of their loss and the actions of her son are unimaginable. After Chris Watts' arrest, his parents, Ronnie and Cindy Watts, were devastated. They spoke out to reporters from their home in North Carolina, expressing their disbelief and heartbreak. Despite their son's guilty plea, they struggled to accept the reality of what had happened. Cindy, in particular, was adamant that Chris wasn't a sociopath or a psychopath. Cindy recalled how she wasn't allowed to speak to Chris freely before his plea agreement. She wanted to understand why he confessed and whether he truly committed the crimes he was accused of. She felt that his defense attorneys shut her down when she tried to get answers. Cindy and Ronnie questioned if Chris had been coerced into taking the plea deal, unsure if he had been given the chance to fully explain himself. Their frustration was palpable. They were devastated by the loss of their granddaughters and their son, but Cindy couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. She remembered Chris telling her that he lost control and went into a rage, killing Shanann. He also claimed that he couldn't place the girls' bodies with Shanann's after what she had allegedly done. But what had she done? It doesn't take long before it becomes painfully clear that she never liked Shanann. Despite Chris' confession, Cindy and Ronnie couldn't fully comprehend why he would dispose of the girls' bodies in oil tanks. They couldn't understand what could have triggered such a horrific act. They acknowledged Shanann's family's pain and loss, but they also pleaded for the truth from their son. Cindy felt overwhelmed and helpless, yet determined to fight for her son if he wouldn't fight for himself. Shanann's family, devastated by the loss, responded to the Watts interview with their own heartfelt statement, defending Shanann's character and emphasizing the brutality of Chris's actions. They expressed their frustration at the Watts family's defense of Chris and their desire to protect Shanann's memory and reputation. It's important to remember that both sets of grandparents lost their beloved grandchildren. Each family had a child deeply involved in this tragedy. Both love their children unconditionally and may not see the flaws that outsiders easily spot. You can't fault someone for that kind of love. Shanann may be completely gone, but Chris is now just a shadow of the person he once was. In a sense, he died along with his family, leaving only his physical presence behind. After Chris Watts' sentencing, the media frenzy surrounding the case intensified. Cindy Watts, who had been vocal about her disbelief in her son's guilt, faced a storm of public inquiry. The media often painted her as a mother in denial, unwilling to accept the reality of her son's actions. Cindy struggled with the dual loss of her son and granddaughters, grappling with unimaginable pain. Her public statements and interviews were often dissected, with many perceiving her as a monster for defending Chris. Despite her heartbreak, Cindy continued to express doubt about the full story, fueling media criticism. The media frequently portrayed Cindy as equally culpable, focusing on her vocal support for Chris and her strained relationship with Shanann. Headlines like "Chris Watts, Parents, Our Son is Not a Monster" from ABC News and Cindy Watts. "There's just no way he could have done this" from People magazine highlighted her disbelief in Chris' guilt, painting her as a figure of denial and complicity. This portrayal overshadowed her grief and the complexity of her emotions, reducing her to a one-dimensional character in the public eye. Cindy's interviews were dichotomized and analyzed, with every word scrutinized for signs of denial or complicity. In one interview with ABC News, she said, "He did not kill those children. He's not the sociopath next door." Another significant quote from Cindy, reported by People magazine, was, "I want answers. I need to know why this happened. We still don't have all the pieces." Her statements expressing disbelief in Chris's guilt were often taken out of context, further vilifying her in the public's eyes. The media's portrayal failed to capture her anguish and the genuine confusion she felt over the drastic actions of her son. Cindy has often expressed that she believes there are unanswered questions about the case. She told Denver 7, "There are things that we don't know, things that don't add up." Her insistence on seeking the truth, while understandable from a mother's perspective, was often portrayed as delusional or obstructive. The complex dynamics within the Watts family, including the strained relationship with Shanann, were simplified to fit a narrative of blame and denial. The media played a significant role in shaping public perception of Cindy Watts, often casting her in a negative light. This portrayal influenced how the public viewed her, leading to widespread condemnation and lack of empathy for her situation. The media's focus on sensationalism overshadowed the deeper, more nuanced aspects of her grief and search for answers. It's important to recognize the intense pain and confusion Cindy Watts has experienced, losing both her granddaughters and, effectively, her son. While her actions and statements may seem difficult to understand, they stem from a place of profound grief and a mother's instinct to protect her child. The media's portrayal of Cindy as a monster fails to capture the full scope of her emotional journey and the complexity of her situation. Cindy Watts' story is a reminder of the far-reaching impacts of such horrific events and the role media can play in story we are told and how we piece facts together. I just want to remind you that we are all human, and human nature is a complex topic, and there isn't always a right or wrong response. And that just because we don't all always agree, it doesn't mean we're monsters. Perhaps the Arzukeks and Watts shouldn't be fighting each other at all, as there is another party whose involvement remains unknown, yet we all know who she is and that she was involved. Perhaps Cindy has been right all along. Next time on Timeless Mysteries, we will discuss what qualifies one to be put into witness protection. Who else was there the night of the murders?